Thanks for tuning in to part 2 of our show. Now, here is your host, Paul Tarsey.
Now, we heard about the very successful Festival of Speed in part 1, but I mentioned at the top of the programme that there was some exciting news that we're now able to release about the future of the Goodwood Road Racing Club. So I'm sitting in a very, very nice room at Goodwood House, overlooking the scene that was only a few days ago. It was the Festival of Speed. Now there are hundreds of people out there taking down pavilions and grandstands and all sorts of other stuff as well. And I'm with Alan Brewer, who is the man who is responsible for all the clubs within the motorsport arena at Goodwood. And Alan, thank you very much indeed for coming on board. And last weekend was a huge success, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Well, first of all, welcome, and thanks, Paul, for having me. Yes, it was. It seems every year, Festival of Speed, we talked about it in the Monday after the event. There's always a moment where all the staff come together and His Grace comes out and we'll have lunch and he says a few words. And every year it seems to get bigger, but also most importantly, every year it seems to get better and people seem to enjoy it more and more. I'm not sure how much bigger it can get, to be honest, in terms of size. I met someone on Sunday that I took them over the road. They hadn't even been over the road yet to see all the manufacturer stands. They spent all their time just watching the hill and up at the rally stage. But no, it was a huge success. The weather was very kind. Obviously very hot, but we'd rather hot than wet, and just puts everyone in a great mood. A really fantastic weekend. Lots of amazing moments on the hill, some car launches, and it's really another fantastic weekend here at Goodwood.
There is so much to see over those 4 days. I mean, you talk about 4 days and you think, well, do everything in 4 days. But you mentioned things like the rally stage and the off-road arena and things like that, which are up at the top of the hill. I am sure a lot of people don't get the time to do it because they're too busy either watching the cars on the hill or they're out there doing the stands.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely spoiled for choice. I think you could be here a week and still not see everything. And there's obviously different things. It's not the same on the hill every single day. There's special launches, special moments. You could probably spend a week here. And actually, what's really interesting, even I was talking to some of the drivers and riders over the weekend, they hardly get to see anything as well, because even if they only might be in a car a couple of times a day doing a run, one of the things they love about this event is the MotoGP guys get to hang out with the Formula One guys, with the Le Mans drivers, and A, they're not kind of under the pressure of competition. B, often they're not there, under their kind of sponsors' orders, effectively. And they might be for a moment, but the rest of the time is theirs. But C, they just never get to hang out. If you're on the motorcycling season, you never get to mingle with the car drivers and vice versa. So, and that just is almost like a little microcosm of what Festival of Speed is about. It's just this enormous coming together of fans, drivers, riders, manufacturers, all in one place, randomly in Chichester, West Sussex, of all places, effectively in a field, and it all just seems to work.
And you say about the field in West Sussex, and yes, it's a very impressive field, I have to say, but still nonetheless a field. And the build process for this starts weeks ago.
Yeah, so it's about a 2 month, the planning process is 18 months. The actual build is between 6 and 8 weeks. And that very much is because the family still live in Goodwood House and it's a functioning office. There's events happen. There's a cricket pitch literally on, in the middle of the Festival of Speed site. There's sheep that graze here. So there's a very defined time in which the land gets handed over internally to the Festival of Speed team. Then they come in, the first thing that goes in is all the roadway, the trackways, so that the trucks can actually get in to start building. There's water pipes goes in, electricity supplies, everything gets kind of put in. And then once the roadway is down, all temporary roadway, in come all the trucks and the Arctics, stands start going up, grandstands. And the central feature is a great example. That takes about 6 weeks for the central feature to go up, so it was the big Singer display this year. I left work, I think, on Tuesday at about 11:30 to run some errands, came back at 2 o'clock, and in that time the whole thing had come down. And it'll be, it'll take a while to get it all, the lawn back and manicured, but that's how quick this all comes down. And there's already grandstands that have disappeared literally 3 days after the event. And it's amazing when you bring people, show them around the estate in the middle of January or February, and you drive them into this area. So this isn't the place of festival. This isn't where festivals. No, that's exactly where the Ford stand was there. That's where McLaren were, and it can't be the same place. Yeah, because in 2 weeks' time, there's literally a field with sheep grazing on it and people playing cricket.
And as I understand it, one of the, if not the oldest cricket pitches in the world.
Yes, there's lots of firsts at Goodwood, but the first known written rules of cricket were written here at Goodwood. And again, the first rules of cricket, written down on a piece of paper in Goodwood House. So we'll come on to some other kind of interesting things like that, but there's lots of moments like that interwoven in Goodwood's history. But cricket is absolutely kind of one of the key sports of the estate, and there's even to the point on the day before revival there's a cricket match in which lots of the drivers come and play, so we still keep that tradition going as well.
Absolutely, because that's my kick-off for revival is always arriving for the cricket and seeing well-known names and faces out there in their whites. But one of the things that came about with this year's Festival of Speed was your announcement, which I think surprised a lot of people, and that was about Goodwood is going to America.
Yes, this was, you could argue it's the biggest Goodwood moment or biggest announcement maybe since the first revival or Festival of Speed, depending on your point of view, but it's been something that's been in the back of His Grace's mind for probably over a decade. And we got very close in 2019 to doing a major event in America, which was going to be kind of effectively based on a Festival of Speed model. And for a number of reasons, that model got parked for various different reasons, and also then the pandemic just curtailed any thoughts of doing something outside of Sussex. But about 18 months ago, we kind of relit the touch paper, so to speak, and thought, what can we do? Because the events here, there's no more room on the estate for more events. The events themselves are full. We don't want the events to get any bigger. There's pressure on all the land, but at the same time, there's this huge appetite from people from around the world that kind of want Goodwood to come to them, or want Goodwood in a different way, kind of a way to digest it a bit differently. And America's always been top of the list. There's all sorts of interwoven history between America and the Goodwood estate in particular. His Grace loves American cars, American car culture, American music, American movies, all that side of thing, the whole shebang. So we kind of got the papers out about 18 months ago. It was about 2 or 3 months before the Festival of Speed. We decided let's go with it, and we're going to announce. So it was about an 8-week turnaround, really, from we're definitely doing this to then get everything ready to launch it.
Wow.
And yeah, I think we did keep it under wraps. I think it was a surprise to most people, and the amount of the overwhelming feedback we've had is we can't wait for this to happen, both for our members here in the UK, that it gives them more events to go to, and then a huge audience in America that up to this point have to travel across the Atlantic, and I think they're very excited to see what we can bring to the other side of the shores.
Now, having been involved with Goodwood for many years, I know all of you well enough that you're not going to be doing the Disney model and just recreating a fiberglass Goodwood house somewhere in the desert and away you go, are you?
No, we took a lot of time. It's something, I guess, in any business, you spend so much time, creating experiences or serving your customers. You often don't spend conscious time looking inwards at what it is actually that you do and kind of makes the business special. And we debated a lot and thought a lot about, you could look at, say, Goodwood House, for example, so that's the iconic, Festival of Speed's iconic because it's that, there's the house and everything else. But we really looked at it and said, if you take the revival, the members meeting, the Festival of Speed, whatever, yes, they're all physically at Goodwood, but ultimately the thing that brings them all together is the estate's ability to convene people. So an excuse to get people together. They're all ways of telling stories in a dynamic, exciting way. So this isn't cars on carpets in exhibition halls or cars on golf courses. This is cars being used, driven, but in a way that tells a story. So at Festival, to have those 3 Ford GT40s go up the hill at Revival was, that was telling a story of this is what happened, we're recreating it, relive this moment if you weren't there. And And those things go kind of beyond geography. And also as well, and I think this is, for 300 years, the family here have been hosting people. Ultimately, whether it's cricket, horse racing, golf, their skill set is hosting people and providing a great time, whether you're a manufacturer or a guest that's just bought a general admission ticket. And we really want to effectively apply that same thinking and logic, but to an event the other side of the world, but in a way that recognises the nuances, in this case, of American car culture, but just applying that kind of Goodwood approach to running events to an American venue. So it's not going to be Goodwood House picked up and dropped in the desert and rebuilt in fiberglass. This is going to be sympathetic to American car culture and the venue that we go to, but applying Goodwood's philosophy to how we run events, how we bring it together, how we invite the cars, how we look after the drivers, how we create an overall experience, bringing that to the other side of the Atlantic.
Now, I have a number of American friends who come over particularly for Revival, and they are always amazed at just how hard the racing is at Revival, which I think is echoed in historic racing throughout the UK and maybe in Europe. But in America, it would be uncharitable to say it's a parade, but it's not as tough as it is here. Is that something that you want to transplant into America, the real tough racing in priceless cars?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say the Revival almost kind of set the precedent back in the day. I'm not sure it deliberately set out to do that. Obviously the idea was to recreate the circuit, but because in the way in which it was done, with this period theme, with a great narrative and a great story, and also one thing that's very different at Goodwood is all the entrants are invited, which gives kind of a bit of control over the grids and making sure the grids are kind of very close and competitive and the cars are well prepared. That just meant, because all those things together, people wanted to come and watch and see it, which kind of created this cycle of it's all about come to watch racing that's fantastic to watch. The historic racing scene is just very different all over the world. But yes, that's very much kind of the goal, is to create an environment in which people in the US come out and watch fair but fierce racing. Whether that's in 50s and 60s cars or 80s Trans Am, whatever it might be, but see cars raced competitively as intended by top quality drivers and owners with cars that are really well prepared, and an environment which makes it conducive to coming to watch fantastic racing, and it's about the whole experience. So that very much is, we'd love to have the equivalent of the TT in the US and do our equivalent, the American version of a Pro-Am race with celebrity drivers, whoever that might be, from IndyCar, NASCAR, with the owners, whether that's in Ford Galaxies or Cobras or 80s Firebirds or Camaros. So the idea very much is to create an overall kind of an event with an amazing all-round experience with competitive racing, and that'll be a long project. That's not something that can happen overnight, but we certainly think kind of done in the correct way that can be done, and I think that will be a huge draw to the event and effectively showcase something that hasn't been seen outside Europe before.
But it's not going to be just an event. It's not just going to be a Revival Mark II, is it? There's going to be an awful lot more going on in the USA under the Goodwood banner.
Yes, so what we announced at the weekend at Festival of Speed was launching the Goodwood Road Racing Club of America, which is going to be a membership in the US, which will be effectively an extension of the GRRC as it currently is. So members can join the GRRC as an American member or as the current GRRC form. The only difference in those two types is effectively there'll be an annual calendar of events, of track days, tours, which will be specific to that region. And then the American team will organise the new headline event, which is going to be at Willow Springs in 2028. But then all GRRC members will have reciprocal access to Festival of Speed, Revival, members meeting and the new event. And the new event in itself, which will be at Willow Springs, that's one of the big projects over the coming months, is really defining what the event concept's going to be. It's not going to be a carbon copy, of exactly, the Revival or members meeting or whatever it might be picked up and dropped in America. It will take inspiration from UK events. And I think it's fair to say, given Willow Springs and that kind of 50s feel to it, I think it's fair to say it will probably have a nostalgic twist of some sort to it. But it's going to be an event concept, again, that's designed for the California market. It's going to be aimed at bringing all car cultures together, so not just catered to historics or modern cars, but with a very unique twist to it. And all I can tell you is that the Duke is very excited about thinking about exactly what that looks like. He went out there a few weeks before Festival of Speed. He loves the site, the whole sense of it, like I say, that California nostalgia. The fact it's out in the desert, it just feels, you know exactly where you are when you're there. And there's a really ambitious project from the team at Willow Springs to kind of renovate is the wrong word, but kind of modernise it, but in a way that's sympathetic to its roots. And again, similar to the Goodwood circuit here when it's graced to rebuilt the circuit in the 90s.
Now, it's interesting because a lot of people probably think of Goodwood, as you say, as being revival, Festival of Speed, members meeting, but there is so much more that GRRC does for its members, from tours to the Christmas ball and summer ball here at Goodwood House and those sorts of things. Are you going to be able to recreate that flavour?
Yes, so that's the plan. So we're going to create a team out in the US on the ground that will, again, part of their role is going to be running that major event at Willow Springs and organising that with the Willow Springs team. And the other part is going to be actively managing a membership community that's going to start in the West Coast region to begin with, and then all being a success and that event kind of really getting up and running. There's no reason why that model can't then expand across into other areas of America, and there could be other major events in the future. But there will be a calendar of events for American-based members to get involved with on the ground, from track days to tours to behind-the-scenes experiences. And again, one of the unusual things, and what we try and do in the calendar in the UK, is it isn't about single mark or kind of, let's say it's about special experiences, but not specialist experiences.
Right, yeah.
So I'll take an example. If you're in the Aston Martin Owners Club, there'll be amazing kind of access through Aston Martin, but you won't have any luck doing things with other brands and things. Which is right, that's a whole kind of MO of clubs, like whether it's single mark clubs or clubs for specific types of cars, where it's classic or hypercar clubs or whatever it might be, or regional clubs, whether it's the Hot Rod Association of Northern California, that's a type of car in a specific area. We're kind of agnostic in terms of hot rods, hypercars, classics, pre-war, concourse, racing, road, all of it. And just given kind of all the events that Goodwood's run over the last 30 years, a huge amount of kind of contacts and friends, if you like, around the world. So the idea is to create an event calendar, again, starting in the West Coast, which can pull all those car cultures together. So we're not wanting to replace the club culture in California, but the idea is you'll be able to go to your Cars and Coffee on a Thursday night with the McLaren Venice Beach group, but maybe once a month get together with your Goodwood members and unite the McLarens with the hot rods, with the Trans Am cars, with the 1950s Lincolns, all come together, and in environments and venues that are very different, and again created in a way that uses all the lessons we've learned from all our kind of 30 years of running events in the UK in order to create kind of events that are really worth travelling to and really special.
It's interesting you should say that, Alan, because I think virtually every concours that happens in the USA with our American cousins will have at least one sort of tour or get together where the cars are out on the road, not at silly speeds and not anything like that, but they'll go out and they'll maybe have lunch somewhere, and I think perhaps that theory started in America rather than in Europe or the UK. So you've got some strong foundations to build on.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate road trip country, isn't it? And it's all really, again, one of the things that Goodwood believes in is these cars should be used, they should be driven. So everything that the club stands for will be about getting out and using cars, not just looking at them. And we want to get under the bonnet of the cars, members getting their hands greasy, so to speak, all the mechanics, how the cars work, how they operate, and ultimately using them. And we have a large array of experience in delivering events like that. And again, but we'll be recruiting a team on the ground that will work with the Goodwood team as well, hand in hand, to be able to interpret that for an American audience. But yeah, the range of events is going to be really exciting. That's, again, another big project at the moment. We've already got lots of ideas and got it roughly mapped out, but really identifying what kind of club events we're doing, what the venues are, is going to be really, really exciting.
Now, you say that you actually pulled the strings together of this really quite quickly, and you've been very clear and very honest that this is not going to happen immediately. What's the timetable look like?
So we announced at Festival of Speed, so early July, obviously the Goodwood Road Racing Club America will be launched, and that there will be a headline event at Willow Springs in the fall of 28. So what happens next is, for anyone that wants to be involved, you can go to grrcamerica.com and effectively sign up to for more information. And then founding membership is going to open in January 2027. There will be a couple of events in the first part of 2027 for founding members. And then the full membership, if you like, for anyone that doesn't join as a founding member, will start in July 2027. So effectively a year today. And then that first full membership year will run from July 2027 to the end of 2028. So the first membership year is going to be 18 months, with effectively 18 months of events, and that will culminate in the Willow Springs event at the end of 2028. And then from that point, it goes into an annual membership aligned with how we run our memberships in UK for. So January to December, with at least one major headline event and a whole plethora of other events in between: track days, tours, socials, meets, everything, you name it.
But I think you've said already that there is going to be a GRRC office in California. And that's great news, because I think otherwise it would be that American members were, I don't want to say second class, but maybe pushed down the ladder a bit. But they're going to get all the support that the people in UK and Europe get currently.
Yeah, so there's two things really going on here. One is we need to interpret the Goodwood message in a way that's sympathetic to the nuances of American car culture. So we recognise it's very important to have a mix of Goodwood staff as well as on the ground people that know the area, know the culture. So that's one big reason for and then the second reason is because there isn't an anchor point like Goodwood, where the family live and where the team are, where we run the events from. Like you say, we can't run this regionally and build a membership community at the same time. So it's really important that we have people on the ground in America to bring that culture together. That team are effectively going to be anchored in California, but the focus on events in that first 18 months is going to be Northern and Southern California and Las Vegas to begin with. Imagine a triangle from San Diego up to San Francisco and across to Las Vegas. And that's not because we feel that's the only area to go. It's just we had to put this into bite-sized chunks. There will, in that first 18 months, likely be some events wider across the US. So potentially, like we do now, visits to other major events, for example. But the bulk of social activity, if you like, will be in that region. And that will help us build a membership community that, again, gives people something that's additive to the existing clubs that they're in, that will culminate in a big event at Willow Springs. And then that model, we looked at all the different areas around America, and we can talk in a moment, if you like, about how we settled in California. But that model can then be used in other areas as well.
This all sounds very, very exciting, and as if you guys haven't got enough to do. You've taken this on, and thank you for that. Just tell me that website again.
grrcamerica.com.
Now, as the air hammers clatter away on the lawn outside here, it's not going to be long before revival, is it?
No, and we've got horse racing in between as well. Well, I think by the time you'll be listening to this, we'll be either just finished or right in the middle of the Qatar Goodwood Festival. So you have Festival of Speed beginning of July. It all comes down. Literally 2 weeks later, there's a huge 5-day horse racing festival up at the top of the hill, about 2 miles away. And then 4 weeks after the horse racing festival, 5 or 6 weeks after the horse racing festival finishes, we're into revival. So it really is back to back to back this time of year.
It's an amazing experience, and I think probably most people who listen to this show have some experience of Goodwood events one way or another. But if you haven't done it yet, get your name down? I mean, I think probably now, Alan, that most of the tickets have gone for Revival, haven't they?
Yes, I think at the time we're recording, I know Saturday is sold out, and I think Sunday might be too. So yeah, if you do want to come to Revival, I think get in there quick. It's a really, really popular event. And if you've never been before as well, then you might be kind of, oh, do I dress up, do I not? You might feel an idiot on the way to Revival, but once you're there, you'd rather fit in than feel the other way around and feel a bit silly when you're there. So just, if you haven't been before, throw yourselves in. Like I say, you'll feel a bit silly on the way down if you have to stop and get petrol in your 1950s Bobby outfit. But once you're there, it really is the most immersive experience. Couldn't be more different to the Festival of Speed. And yeah, if you haven't done it, absolutely kind of make sure, to try and go and see Revival for sure.
Alan Brewer, thank you very much indeed for your time today, and long may it all continue.
Yes, well, thank you very much. It's great, and thanks for your time, Paul, and hope everyone's continuing to enjoy motorsport in this wonderful season. And thank you so much, and we'll see you all soon.
You're listening to Historic Racing News, a copyrighted presentation of Historic Racing News in association with White Squirrel Studios. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or usage without the expressed written permission of Historic Racing News is strictly prohibited. Now back to your host, Paul Tarsey.
Staying with our American theme, the Monterey Car Week that we were talking about in part one is also, I think probably fair to say, the world hub of car sales and auctions throughout the world. And Jim's taken a look at some of the sales worldwide that have happened in the last few weeks, and some of the interesting machinery due to cross the block very soon.
Before we get to that, Paul, I want everyone to know that the line for the GRRC America forms behind me.
I would say, Jim, don't get your hopes up. I don't think it's going to be like the Festival of Speed because you don't have a house old enough.
They're going to go to some cool places, Sonoma and some other places like that. So it will be well worth investigating. Now on to the auction stuff. We've talked a bit about numbers that have just been absolutely stratospheric this year, despite the world economy and things going on in the world that are telling us that we probably shouldn't be doing this sort of stuff. In the first quarter, we smashed a record with $1.2 billion, just short of $1.3 billion. In the second quarter, things are always a little bit quieter. You have some great auctions in Florida, but May pretty much quiets down. They only did $600 million in the second quarter.
Only?
Yeah. Now total for the year so far, $1.9 billion. Just $1,976,000. And we've got Car Week just around the corner. And Car Week, traditionally in the last few years, has been in the $400 million range. There was a low year because of COVID and whatnot. There was no, in 2020, there was no Car Week because of COVID. And in 2021, it was a small rebound. It was a very light year. But then after that, it really picked up. And the record was set not last year, but 2 years ago in 2023 at $471 million. Last year it topped out at about $450 million, give or take. And so we will really be going over the top. I think we should have easily clear to maybe $2.5 billion before we get to the fourth quarter, perhaps. Maybe I'm a little optimistic, which will, a year ago, unofficially, we did $2.5 billion for the year. So we are way ahead. Race car sales, not comparable to what they were a year ago because, of course, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum sold $100 million worth of cars at the beginning of the year. So that kind of skewed the numbers. So far, one of the biggest auction this month, the iconic auction, the BRDC auction for competition cars, cleared $2.3 million. So they had a very good auction. It was some great competition cars. And of course, coming up this month, you will be able to see numbers from all the big auction houses. We've got Bonham's, Mecum, which traditionally theirs is the biggest event with 600 some automobiles crossing the block. You've got Gooding, who have got an eye-popping number of great supercars and that sort of stuff, as well as the most race cars, the most competition cars of anybody in the auction. You've got RM Sotheby's, and you have got the folks at Broad Arrow. So all of the major, other than Art Curiel and Iconic and Historic, you've got pretty much the major auction houses all in attendance. Some highlights, we've got Bonham's is the first out of the box. Their auction is tied directly to the Monterey reunion, the historic race car festival. They have got Dan Gurney's Westlake Ford 1966 Lola T70 K&M racer for sale. That's gonna get a lot of attention. Yeah, and here is one that you probably have never heard of, but I think will really surprise some people. Also crossing, and it has a loose tie to Gurney because it was a race that Jim Clark raced against Dan Gurney in the United States. It's the 1967 Volstead Ford. It was Jim Clark drove the car in the 1967 Rex Mays 300 at Riverside, California. It was to be his last, unfortunately, USAC appearance. The car was raced 30 times in a 3-year span. Drivers who raced it included Cale Yarborough, yes, the stock car Cale Yarborough, Indy legends Tom Sneva, Wally Dallenbach, Jerry Grant, Gordon Johncock, Art Pollard, Chris Amon, George Fulmer, and Ronnie Bucknam, the person we talked about who finished third in the 66 24 Hours of Le Mans, has driven the car. So, and one of the things that made the car unique, besides the fact that Clark drove it, was it was the first car to have a strut-supported rear wing. And you can see pictures of it where I'm doing a profile, a preview of Monterey Car Week, the auctions, and you can see pictures of the car, both in period, and you can see this wing that suddenly appeared in Formula One at the 1968 Belgian Grand Prix after Clark went to Lotus, went to Colin Chapman and said, "You need to look at this. This is something that we may want to take a look at." So that was an interesting addition. We've got Mecum, who, as I said, has got a huge 3-day event, and they've got a car that we have seen cross the block 3 times. Well, this will be the 3rd time we've seen it cross the block. And this will be the first time it will sell because it's being offered at no reserve. So it's going to sell. And that is, you guys will remember, Bonham's had the car a year ago, and it was the Porsche 935 Lady, the Bob Aiken Coca-Cola car that Dave Clem built in his shops in Tucker, Georgia. So that car's being offered at no reserve, so it's going to find a new home, and it could be a good bargain. A good bargain for
somebody. Be very interesting to see what that sells for, Jim, because clearly the expectation is different from what the real price people are prepared to pay. So that with no reserve, that's a real price. That's a real value.
Yeah, you're gonna see the real price. Now, the car was offered recently on Bring a Trailer, which is an American auction, online auction thing. Got up to $700,000 and didn't sell. Again, it didn't meet the reserve. So it'll be interesting to see at no reserve what it actually brings. I don't think it'll get to $1 million unless you get two guys there that suddenly are big fans and think because it's no reserve they're going to get a bargain. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Now there are two cars here that have they got a special place in my heart. They came along right when I was really getting involved in covering road racing and IMSA and that sort of stuff in America, and it is two cars that are really legendary here in the United States, and it'll be interesting to see what you guys think. There were only 4 of these cars built, and 2 of them, they were built for a particular project. 2 of them raced together, 2 Lola T116 Mazdas, made famous by California racer Jim Busby and his BF Goodrich effort to race at Le Mans and the FIA Group C2 Championship with street radial tire compound. They were slicks, but they were street radial compound tires. Like I said, 4 of the cars were built. Both of the cars, both cars are being offered, number 67 and number 68. Both cars had victories to their credit. The 68 car triumphed in the C2 category at Le Mans, driven by John Morton, John Osteen, and Toshimi Katayama. The 67 car claimed top honors at the 1,000-kilometer race at Monza, driven by Busby and Rick Knoop. So it's going to be very interesting to see. These cars were the subject of a great film that BF Goodrich did. So it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of price that those two cars.
If I'm mentally picturing the right cars, they actually were really nice-looking cars as well.
Yes,
some of the
very
C2s
flat,
of that
long.
era were a bit odd, shall we say, but they were 2 great-looking cars.
Yes, yep, and they are being offered as they raced at Le Mans. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see just how they do.
It's interesting, isn't it, with that, Jim, that you've got cars like that, which are cars that enthusiasts would know. Enthusiasts would
Yes.
be able to picture them white and black, but they're not charismatic cars like, say, a 935 is, or a GT40 for that matter. And does that mean that it's going to appeal to the enthusiast rather than the collector? I hope it is, because I'd love to see those cars out on track. But the collector market is a strange beast.
Oh, it certainly is, and I've got some data to talk about when we wrap up that will show you just how market trends are changing. And I think that you've got the fact that it's what I'm hoping, and this is a stretch. This is me making a big leap, and I admit that. I'm hoping the fact that the Monterey reunion is so focused on the cars of Japan that we may get some enthusiasts and some owners show up at the auction and take these 2 Mazdas. They were powered by 13B Wankel rotary engines, and they're classics. And so I'm hoping that with enthusiasts in town, because of the reunion, we might see it go to an enthusiast and see these cars on track. And you talked earlier, Paul, Jurd, about the Le Mans winning Mazda Garden Your Ears. Well, these 2 little beasts are pretty as well with those Wankel engines.
Yeah, you don't even have to be looking at the track to know a rotary engine car's gone by.
Yeah, you've got that right. Now, Broad Arrow has got, for Ayrton Senna fans, a real important piece of Ayrton Senna history. They've got the 1982 RT3 that he debuted in the fall of the 1982 Ralt. He debuted at Thruxton in a non-championship race, and in 1982. And this is the car that he debuted in. And, of course, he was fastest, took the pole, set the fastest lap, and was on his way to his maiden victory. So this is a very important car in the Ayrton Senna history. After that race, the car was sold to Helmut Marko, and Gerhard Berger used it in the 1983 European Formula 3 Championship. So some pretty hot guys have driven that car.
Whatever happened to Helmut Marko? And
Max Verstappen has become the bane of his existence. Yeah, really. Yeah, really.
Moving on.
Speaking of BF Goodrich, Broad Arrow also has a very important part of BF Goodrich racing history. The 1981 Porsche 924 Carrera GTR that won the IMSA GTO class at Le Mans in 1981, again driven by Jim Busby along with Doc Bundy and Manfred Schurte. The car, again, was the first foray into endurance racing for BF Goodrich. And again, it was racing tires that were made with the street radial compound, the Comp TAs. So this is a very important part of their auction. So that is, and then we get to Gooding and RM Sotheby's. I saved the biggest ones for last. Gooding, of course, is the official auction house of the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance. So the Pebble Beach auction will start on Friday, the 14th, and they have their usual brace of supercars and that sort of stuff. But they have 18 cars with a competition pedigree crossing the block. And the star of the show is probably going to be the 1964 Shelby Cobra Daytona Coupe. This is one of only 6 cars built. Of course, it was built to challenge the Ferrari 250 GTO. It is resplendent in its blue colors that it raced in at Sebring. The car made its debut. Its chassis number CSX 2300, and that's important, and I'll tell you why in just a second. The car made its debut in 1964 with Bob Bondurant and Jochen Nierpasch, debuting the car at the Tour de France Automobile. And then this car was part of the 1965 run that Shelby did to dominate the World GT circuit. The car raced at Daytona and Sebring, and the car is actually in the livery that it raced that year at Sebring. It raced at the Nürburgring and Reims. For the 66 season, the car moved to Japan, where it won 2 races and finished second twice in just 6 outings. But here's the kicker. Of all those Cobra Daytonas, as I said, there were only 6 of them. This was the only one that Carroll Shelby actually owned.
Whoa.
Ka-ching.
That's, yeah, boom, exactly. He owned the car from 1975 to 1998. So, and it's estimated at $25 million.
That's a bit special, isn't it, that car?
When you bear in mind that they made 36 Ferrari 250 GTOs and they made 6 Daytona Cobras. I would think as an investment that could get up to that sort of figure. We'll wait and see, and I'm sure you'll bring us news on that next time round.
Another big one from Gooding Christie's, and you can see all of the cars. I'm just hitting the highlights here, guys. There is the 1963 Ferrari 250P that is the first of the P cars. This was the first mid-engine Ferrari ever built. This was the car that finished runner-up at Sebring and 3rd overall at Le Mans in 1963. Got an interesting story behind that car. They thought it was one car, but then when they went to restore it, they found the chassis plate had been covered up, and the real chassis plate, it was this car. So it was that's got an interesting story. But Porsche enthusiasts are excited to see the 1968 Daytona 24-hour winning Porsche 907 Longhec, the long tail, first Porsche to win a 24-hour race outright. It was the first prototype success for the mercurial Ferdinand Piëch. A car features a 4-cam flat 8-cylinder engine, and it was driven in Daytona by one of PX favorites, Vic Alford, Jochen Neerpasch, there's that name again, Rolf Stomlin, Joe Siffert, and the legendary Hans Hermann. So that is a huge bit of racing history. Sotheby's, their Monterey auction has limited competition cars, but 4 of them are 4 of the most significant Corvettes ever. First is the Cunningham Corvette LM that was raced at Le Mans in 1960. It is the number 1 of the 3 cars that went over. It was driven by Briggs Cunningham and Bill Kimberly, and it remained in the Cunningham family until it crosses the block.
Cool. Wow.
This month. Yeah, very interesting story on that car. They have an Indianapolis. I'll finish up with the Corvettes. Sticking with the Le Mans theme, the 1968 Corvette L8, the red Nart Le Mans car. This was built by Troy English's Red Team. It raced in 1972. Dave Hines and Bob Johnson finished 15th overall and first in the Group 4 5-liter class. An ultra-rare 1963 Grand Sport from Mecum Racing. This car was one of 5 Grand Sports constructed. Only 3 of them were coupes. This is one of the coupes. It dominated the Nassau Trophy races. It finished second at the 12 Hours of Sebring, driven by John Cannon and none other than A.J. Foyt. So huge provenance there. What many believe to be the winningest Corvette in all of Corvette's great history is crossing the block, the 1969 Corvette Stingray L8 V.V. Cook. Only 116 L88s were built in 1969. This one was simply known as the V.V. Cook Corvette because it was built specifically for him. It was part of a privateer racing program that Corvette had, that you could go to the factory and get a bespoke competitive car built for American Motorsports. And this is one of those cars. This car won 4 consecutive SCCA B Production National Championships. It's credited with over 29 SCCA victories. It raced at the 24 Hours of Daytona and the 12 Hours of Sebring. So very, very cool car. And then an Indy 500 winner. Just hold my beer. This is Arm Sotheby's. Besides the Corvettes, they have the 2013 Indianapolis winning Dallara DW12 that carried the immensely popular Tony Kanaan to his only Indy 500 victory at a speed of over 187 miles per hour, which at the time was the fastest 500 ever at Indianapolis. The car raced 2 more times after the 500 at Pocono and Fontana, claiming 3rd place in California. Estimates for this car exceed $1 million. Interesting, the car was sold, the owner of that car was Brian Herta. And right after Kanaan won the race, somebody bought the car. And he agreed to let them race it 2 more times. Can you imagine sitting on pins and needles as that Pocono and Fontana? Don't wreck. Please don't wreck. Please don't wreck. Nobody spin in front of them. Nobody spin in front of them.
I bet there were several paragraphs in the sales detail that said if you crash it,
I could. If you break it, you bought it.
Yeah, that's the one.
If you break it, you bought it
or
back.
If you, in this case, if you break it, you kept it.
Yes.
So one of the interesting things that I'm going to be watching for is the shift in sales. We have got modern supercars are starting to take over. Pre-war cars last year were less than 8% of the sales. Supercars were over 39% of the sales. So the Enzo era Ferraris are shrinking. They have now become less than 20% of the sales at Monterey. So it's going to be very interesting to see if that trend continues and just how strong that supercar market is as people become more and more interested in what we would consider the more modern collector cars.
Thank you, Jim.
And if you want a more in-depth study and look, go to HRN Chronicles.
Thank you for that too, because that's good stuff. There are lots of ways to keep up with historic racing news. Our podcast comes out on the first Wednesday of every month. The 2-hour show includes interviews with drivers and other personalities from years gone by, plus news of historic events like the Goodwood Revival and the Silverstone Festival. And Jim Roller keeps us up to speed on happenings stateside and looks at the activities both on and off the track in the USA.
And you can also follow us on our YouTube channel, HRN Chronicles. It's our version of a time machine. We have archive features, exclusive interviews, and behind-the-scenes stories going way back into the history of our glorious sport. Plus, we keep an eye on the latest classic and competition car auction news. It's a place where motorsports history lives.
And don't forget our amazing Facebook page with over 1 million views a month. It is one of the leading social media channels for the historic racing fan. We feature tales from years gone by, news from around the racing world, and we also take the opportunity to flesh out the stories we cover on our podcasts with photographs and yet more background information.
If you would like to find more editions of the Historic Racing News podcast, try searching Historic Racing News wherever you get your podcasts.
The YouTube channel is simply called HRN Chronicles.
And just search Facebook for the Historic Racing News page.
If the Historic Racing News podcast, HRN Chronicles, and our Facebook page are not enough, you can now get more of PJ, Paul and Jim with Historic Racing News on Stage. That is our new podcast starting August 26th, featuring uncut and uncensored interviews with racing legends that the team has gathered at many different motoring events. Historic Racing News on Stage, available wherever you get your podcasts.
You may remember that in our last show, I talked about an interview that Rob Walker gave many, many years ago about his life in motorsport, and I promised that we would dive into the archives to find it. And here is just a small part of a fabulous conversation.
Well, my mother very foolishly took me off the sands of Boulogne, where I was throwing sand in all the French children's face, and took me to the Boulogne Grand Prix in 1924. And I dare to say I wasn't very old then, but I do remember all about it. I sat next to the wife of the person who won the voiturette class, who was a chap called Marshall. He won in a Bugatti Type 37. And he had a garage of all places in Portman Square. And the Grand Prix itself was won first, second and third by 3 Chenard walkers. And after the race, my mother, even more foolishly, told the taxi driver to take us round the circuit. And by this time he'd really got the sort of feel of the thing. We were practically turning over, and I felt, what with sitting next to the wife of the winner of the voiturettes and the cars that won the race being called Chenard Walker, there must be some connection there. And I think from that moment onwards, I never stopped thinking about motor racing. My mother made another mistake. We had a long drive at my home, which was a mile or so, and she gave me a car to keep me quiet, an old stolen thing she found somewhere in Bristol. And she gave it to me for Christmas when I was 10 years old. Well, from that time on, my life was spent trying to do the record for the drive. It was a Bullnose Morris. And then, of course, that turned from Bullnose Morrises into Austin Sevens, which the second chauffeur was really put purely to look after me, to tune my drive specials. That was his job. And as soon as I became 17, I bought 16 I started with a Racing Morgan, which had already killed 4 people. And it was very quick, but it only had 2 little bands that went round the rear wheel of Ferodo bands right out in the open. And that was the total braking. There was nothing on the front at all. And as I say, it was very quick. It do about 90 in those days. This, I think I pushed it more than I drove it. But then I became 17 and I was able to drive a car myself, and I bought a supercharged, or I was given for my birthday, a supercharged E. Francis. And this soon changed into an Ulster TT supercharged E. Francis, and I started racing. And from then on, it was non-stop, and with little success. And then when I was up at Cambridge, I was, during the middle of the term at Cambridge, I was naturally walking down Bond Street or Park Lane or something, and I saw in the window the most beautiful Delahaye I'd ever seen. And this was the, I don't know whether you'd call it's the competition type 35 racing one, and it at the time held the lap record in the TT, and Brewer had owned it. He'd lapped Brooklands at 119, which was not bad for a sports car. And you know, I really wanted it, but it cost £400, and my allowance for the year, including paying my Cambridge bills, was 360. But I suddenly learnt about hire purchase very quickly, and within hours the car was mine. Of course, my mother knew nothing about this. And the next thing, I entered it for Brooklands during the term of Cambridge, and I used to come down, drive up Brooklands, and then go back to Cambridge, following in the footsteps of Whitney Straight. But he used to win, and I didn't. Actually, my first race, I was winning until the last, or about to win until the last corner, the Vickers Bend, and I went and spun the thing. But anyway, I did win there with it later that year, and then I took it to Le Mans, and my co-driver, who's still alive, Ian Connell, burnt his foot. We had an exhaust gasket go, and all the exhaust was coming through. It was terribly hot, and he burnt his foot in the middle of the night, and I had to drive. Well, I'd driven from midnight till 4, and then I drove from 8 till the end of the race, also with this terrific heat coming through. And I'd come in every now and again. I fortunately had rope-soled shoes, and I'd jump in a bucket of water and wet the whole of my shoes and my trousers to cool off, and then get back in the thing. Meantime, Count Haydn, who owned Delahaye's in England, was a great drinker, and they were all drinking champagne solidly in the pit. And suddenly, about 2 o'clock, they thought of this poor bastard who was out there in the heat, and nearly all the champagne had gone. So they called me in for a quick glass to revive me to do the last 2 hours, and I finished 8th, I think. And then got into the car and drove it to Paris, where all the drivers, all the English drivers anyway, had met in a nightclub, and we drank the whole night through, and we were still there the following morning at 10 o'clock drinking. So quite a session. But mind you, we'd been up all the night before as well, racing. So it wasn't too bad an effort. And then I was to race it in France the day war broke out. And as I was getting starting money, which was an unusual thing in those days, if you didn't appear, you had to pay up what they were going to pay you to start. And I wasn't going to lose my money for anything, so I stayed till the very last moment, and I think I got it back on the last boat before war broke out, because the race was at La Baule on the very day war broke out. And during the war, I did run it at the beginning of the war. I had 2 Delahaye's at the time, and I was a pilot in the Fleet Air Arm.
You're listening to Historic Racing News, where motorsport's history lives. Now, back to an excerpt from an interview with English racing legend Rob Walker.
During the war I was married, and actually just before Dunkirk, and my wife said to me, if we get married, you're never to motor race again. You can do speed trials or you can do hill climbs, but you're never to do circuit racing again. And as I was in the Fleet Air Arm, and I think we started 260 people on my course, and 25 came out alive. So I didn't really think that I was ever going to see another motor race, let alone drive in one. So I willingly gave my promise. And after the war, of course, there I had what had been the fastest road racing car in Great Britain, and I wasn't allowed to drive it. So I did the only thing that I used to speed trial it, but I did the only thing that I could do, and I got drivers for it. And Tony Rolt was the first really good driver I had, but he was the last of the, if Tony Brooks doesn't mind me saying this, he was the last of the real amateurs. I mean, if somebody came to pass him, he'd pull over. And which I soon learned was not the thing to do, because after Tony Rolt, by this time I had the Delage, the 1.5 supercharged Delage, which Tony did very well, and he was up in company with people like Farina and Gonzalez and Fangio in the 159 Alphas, and which was very good for a car which was then some 30 years old or something, but we tuned it up quite a bit. And after the Delage, I got a B-type Connaught in 1952, and Tony in that year won. We did 24 meetings. Of course, we'd run more than one race in a meeting, and he won 16 races, and he had 7 seconds. In the British Grand Prix in 1953, he split the Maserati and Ferrari team up, and they had people like Ascari, Fangio, Farina, Villarese, and all the top, and I think we were lying 3rd or 4th when 10 laps from the end the key broke in the drive shaft and put us out, which was disappointing, but it was certainly a good car. Then Tony gave up in 1953, and I had Peter Collins drive for me, and Peter really showed me what a professional driver was in his first race at Crystal Palace, when Horace Gould was driving in a Cooper Bristol, and Horace got in front of him at the start and just wouldn't let him past. And it was the race was in 2 heats, and so Peter went up to him in the interval and he said, "Horace, if you do that to me in the 2nd heat, I'll push you off." And Horace did do it to him in the 2nd heat, and Peter duly just pushed him off. And then I realized what a professional racing driver was. In 1956, John Cooper brought out the first of the rear-engine Cooper Climaxes. And Reg Parnell had been driving for me in the Connaught at this time, and he had a very bad accident at Crystal Palace and couldn't drive anymore, but he was still my paid-up driver. And when this Cooper Climax came out, the 1500 Formula 2, I rang him up and I said, "Look, Reg, I think this looks a jolly good car. What about me getting one?" And he said two very important things. He said, "Yes, buy one immediately, Rob." And he said, "I don't know if you know, but Alf Francis, Stirling's famous mechanic, is in the market." And so I immediately got onto Alf, and Alf, having looked us over and decided he would like to work for us, and I bought him a house and settled him in. And I think from that time on, the career became a real moving show. In the middle of 1956, they brought out 3 of these Coopers. One was a works one, which Roy Salvadori drove. I had the second one, and Jack Brabham built himself up one in the Cooper factory. And Tony Brooks very kindly said that he would drive for me for that year and the future. And our first race was the Oulton Park Gold Cup. And he drove the Cooper in the Gold Cup, and he drove this 300 SL in a saloon car race. He won the saloon car race, I think, extremely easily. He'll tell you more about it than I can. I think he was probably easing off to make it a race, but I'm not quite sure about that. He had a bit of a battle with the Cooper. I can't remember if we had any troubles, but we literally only picked it up about a week before at the most, and Alf hadn't had time to work on it very much. And obviously the works one had got any tweaks that were going. And Roy Salvadori won fairly narrowly. Tony was second and Jack Brabham third. And it was rather wondered whether there'd be any motor racing at all because of the Suez Crisis. And John very much wanted them to enlarge the Climax engine so as it could be put in for a Formula One car. But when the Suez Crisis came up, Climax had said that any development must be paid by John or whoever. And John was a bit worried with his finances that there might not be any motor races, and decided he couldn't afford to do it. So I then stepped in and said, well, if I can have the first engine, I will finance it, which I did. And with the first engine, it was only 1960, and we were racing in Formula One against 2.5 litre. And our first race, Jack Brabham was to drive for me. I think because it was a joint effort between Coopers and myself, but the chassis and the engine were both mine. And he lent me Jack Brabham for the year because he had Roy Salvadori driving for him, and they were only using one car. We had Monaco as our first race, and it didn't turn out too well. In those days they had 3 practices, and Jack got himself lost coming to Monaco and missed the first practice. The second day he was setting up the chassis, and he was just going to change the brakes, and he had too much braking on the rear, and he went through the Casino, and that finished that chassis. Fortunately, we brought down one of the Formula 2 Cooper chassis, the one that had Coopers had run at Oulton. And so we put the engine in that. And the last day of practice, we weren't qualified, and we had 10 minutes to go and still weren't qualified because somebody had spilt oil all over the circuit. And I got them to stop the practice and to put something down over the oil, and then they started again, and we got in by 0.2 of a second, I think. And by 100 laps, Jack was lying third, and then it was 105 laps in those days, and then the petrol pump broke loose from the engine when Jack was somewhere right up by the casino, and he pushed the car, which you were allowed to do in those days, all the way home and finished sixth. And I remember turning to my wife, Betty, and saying when we got home, do you know, we were actually third in a world championship race, and then this happens to us. And so she said, oh, don't worry, next year you'll do better. In 1959, as you know, Van Wals gave up motor racing, and Stirling came to me and he said, can I drive Formula 1 and Formula 2 for me? And by this time, you know, we were a partnership and we were great friends and everything. And so I said, of course, and again we had gearbox trouble all the time. And we won the Portuguese Grand Prix, which was held that year at Estoril, and we also won Monza. But our main problem all the time was the gearbox braking. And we were left in a situation at the end of the race that the last race was the American Grand Prix, and it was held at Sebring, and we had to win the race and have the fastest lap, and if we did that we would win the World Championship. And by quarter way through the race we were leading the race and we had the fastest lap and the gearbox broke. And we then had Maurice Trintignant driving the second car, and Stirling came out and he sort of waved Maurice Trintignant on and sort of got him into a real state, and he just failed to win the race himself by about a bonnet's length, and McLaren won his first race. Then 1960, Colin Chapman came out with the Lotus 18, and this was the first real rear-engine car that handled properly. I mean, the others were just put together, but this was a proper set-up job. And we couldn't hold it with the Coopers, and Innes Ireland beat Stirling at Goodwood. And Stirling then went to Colin Chapman and said, could Rob have a Lotus 18? And Colin, I think, thought, well, I'm not going to win a world championship on my own, but with Stirling in the car, I think we could. And so he let us have one, and we got it 10 days before Monaco of 1960, and we duly won the race.
I just love that. If you'd like to hear more of that piece, then let me know on tarseyhrn@gmail.com, tarseyhrn@gmail.com, because there's a lot more to be heard, and it's straight out of a completely different age.
Understatement of the century, Mr. Tarsey. Understatement of the century.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's it for now. That's it for the August show. Thank you to Alan Brewer from Goodwood and everybody at GRRC, to John Fitzpatrick, Rebecca Leopard and the team from the Shelsley Walsh Classic Nostalgia event. And I'm always grateful to Paul Jurd and the man who also produces the show, Jim Roller. So thank you, gentlemen. We'll be back during the first week in September, which is always a busy time, and that will be bringing you some of the news and looking back on some of the things that have happened in August. So in the meantime, my name is still Paul Tarsey, and if you have been, thank you very much for listening.
We hope you have enjoyed the August edition of Historic Racing News. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page and look for us on YouTube at HRN Chronicles. Look for us again the first Wednesday of September when we will preview the 28th Goodwood Revival. Paul Jurd will look at the career of Jack Brabham and Jim Roller will recap the Monterey Car Week auction scene. And don't forget, you can hear more from the Historic Racing News team with our newest podcast, Historic Racing News On Stage, available wherever you get your podcasts August 26th.